Let's Talk Small Business, the real talk, no BS podcast for business owners and entrepreneurs who want to grow and actually enjoy the ride. I'm Mitchell Wilson. Let's get into it. Today's guest is Jessica Osborn, a marketing strategist, business coach, and the founder of Business Jam program. Let's not forget Mum in there as well. With over 20 years in marketing, including leading as a head of marketing for a top 100 firm, Jessica now helps online coaches like myself and simplifies their business, refines their position, and of course builds a high demand signature programs for them. Now, she's also the host of She's the Business podcast and helped hundreds of women transition from scattered offers to streamlined, profitable businesses. So what I love about Jessica's approach is that it's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things with clarity and intention. Jessica, let's talk small business.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. It was a lovely welcome. So thank you.
Yeah. So, and we were just talking before we got on this podcast that today, I mean, you help out, gender aside, you help out people like me who are business coaches, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So I'm going to learn a whole lot from this.
Yeah, well, hopefully. But you know, you're here in the coaching space. I'm sure you've got a lot of things going for you. And often what I find, it's not actually a lack of knowledge or talent or smarts that my clients are struggling with. It's just that you can't often see the label from inside the jar, if we want to use an analogy. It's like they think they're doing the things and they are doing lots of things right. And it's just that they're not quite aligned. And that's why it's not gelling. That's why things aren't working. And those are the really subtle, invisible threads that are so difficult to see because they don't really show up in your data. They're not showing up on your Instagram feed, for example. It's all in behind that. And that's really where I get into and I love to talk about.
Well, I'm going to love to listen. Now, in saying that, your journey, how did you first of all get into becoming a business coach?
Great question. I think I always wanted to run my own business since I was young. And I remember being 18, 19, and I applied for a job in London as a PA. Not that I wanted to be a PA, but the recruitment agent told me to go and apply for it. And he said to me, "What do you want to do in 5 years' time? Where do you see yourself?" And I said, "Oh, running my own business." I was like, here I am at 18 applying for a job. So clearly not the answer that probably would have been the right answer, but they hired me anyway. So anyway, that's history. I think I always just had this drive and a pull, but I spent a long time building a career in marketing first. So, you know, I did the degree, I got the jobs, and for ages was really focused on that corporate ladder, climbing it like as fast as possible. And wow, there's a lot of hurdles. There's a whole lot we could unpack in that. But long story short, I got there in my mid-30s. I was head of marketing communications, reporting into the CEO, thinking, well, the next step is really CEO. And I was like, I just don't like the look of that. Like, I don't like what that looks like from a lifestyle perspective. Just, you know, everything was about work and the family was suffering. Like, I could see the family were just not having their dad around hardly ever. You know, he really wasn't engaged in the kids' lives at all. And at that same time, I happened to become a mum. So I went through this huge shift. You know, obviously biologically, a lot changes and we're only just learning about all the things that change, not just in actually growing a baby in your body, but, you know, your brain sort of rewires and your body rewires. So it's just, I guess there is a huge shift that happens and perspective shift that happens. And in that time I took away in maternity leave, suddenly I was able to see from the outside of the jar, like what was actually going on and what it was like. And I was like, I don't want that. I really could not see there being a path where I could have the life I wanted and sort of fulfillment in what I did. You know, I had this awful place of being in a position that you think you would have so much impact and be able to offer so much. And I felt so hamstrung. Partly, I guess it's a, you know, publicly listed company. There's a board of directors. But even at that top level, you're still being told what to do all the time. And, you know, it just, everything pushed me towards starting my own business. And that's when I had my second baby. So it took me a while to, the pull of the career. There were very strong security ties there. I really wasn't sure what to do because it felt like starting from scratch. But when I left for my second baby, I was like, this is it. I've got 9 months to get this happening. So that's what I did. I in the hospital.
So you took that time.
Yep, I just went, bang, I'm going to do it. And the plan was not to go back, and essentially I didn't. So that's how it came about. But ironically, this wasn't actually my first business. I did start one earlier because, as I said, I've always had this dream of being my own boss. And I'd started an online business in 2010, back when businesses didn't really use Facebook back then. Online advertising was sort of being on some directories. It was doing a bit of Google ads. It was a whole different ballgame. So I started an online business then that was a side hustle, and it remained a side hustle. I got it to the point where I sold it. It was still successful, even with
congratulations
input. I know. Yeah. I actually kind of always downplay that, but it was quite a good achievement in the end when I look at it. But it wasn't really, gosh, we could do a whole episode on that. I started it for all the wrong reasons. I was just chasing a hole in the market. It was not something that I really felt passionately about, even though I could use a lot of my skills to do it. So long story short, I landed where I am because I realized being on maternity leave that second time, I just kept on thinking about everything to do with brands, marketing, business. I was seeing it all. I was literally writing blog posts in my head while I was taking a shower. And I thought, okay, I'm going to stop ignoring that this is really where I like to be. This is my thing. Mm-hmm. So how can I build a business around it? And I kind of fell into coaching. Definitely, I feel, we're here down in Australia, New Zealand. I feel like the coaching industry was quite well developed in the US, and it wasn't really much of a thing here. Like, obviously it existed. I was definitely nowhere near the first coach, but there were far less people doing it in 2017. And, it was more like you had sports coaches. We didn't have business coaches so much. And it was like this thing, you may relate to it, where I was like, how do I find the things that I really love that are where I can add the most impact and be great? And it took a while to sort of filter through, all of the different skill sets I had, all the different parts of marketing, communications that I'd done over my 20 years working. There's so many ways that you could go. And I realized it was actually more the leadership, the mentoring my team, helping them to be great at what they were doing, and having that sort of big picture view and the view of the potential and what the real opportunities were. That was like, that's actually my thing. And so that sort of naturally went into coaching, and I started there. So that was a very long-winded answer to your question, but right. There you go. You've got the story.
Okay. Well, we're going to fast forward a little bit now to the business coach. And like I said, hey, this is me, so I'm probably going to be a little bit selfish here and pull as much out of you. Take us back to the period in the beginning, and I know this will be you because it's everyone. Take us back to where you were juggling like multiple offers, and what did your business actually look like day to day?
Wow. It was hard, shall we just say. Hard, heavy. When there are multiple offers, there's so much that's going on behind the scenes. In order to, each offer, when you think about it, it needs its own messaging, its own process, its own, if you've got sales pages, blurbs, whatever, emails, whatever you're doing around each one, they need that. So you're just multiplying that by however many different offers you have. Then you talk the back end processes, the client onboarding, the systems that support each one. And, you really want a lot of those systems in place because it streamlines your business. If you're doing everything literally one step at a time manually, then, that's the ultimate of hard work. And that's like, you really want to use processes to streamline. So, imagine that even if you have processes, you still have to then have a process for each offer, and they are going to be slightly different. There are things that would have to be unique if you're going to provide a great customer experience. And I think for me, having come from that background of marketing, customer experience, it was always about How do you provide a really personalized customer experience so someone feels like they're very well served and they're getting exactly what they want and it's at the right time? So I get right into that. I'm a bit of a nerd on the whole CX side. But that means that, the technology's there to build the processes, which is great. But you try then doing that for multiple offers when you're a tiny business, and you end up with a really top-heavy, unbalanced business model where you're spending so much time, energy, and, I guess the resources even in the systems that you're using for what then you have available coming in. Like, what's the time left to actually serve the clients becomes far less. So that was a huge lesson that I learned at a time. And it's interesting because you may experience this as well, where I already knew this from back in my working days. I'd say to the leaders, let's not create another brand here, because it's just going to create a whole new bunch of work in the back end that's really not efficient, it's not effective, and it's going to drain profit. So I'd say, let's not do that. Let's keep the brand we've got and just create a sub-brand from it, because it's way easier and it's better. You've got more leverage straight away. So it's interesting that I then made that exact mistake in my own business by creating separate offers, separate brands on them. I'm like, one day I'm talking about one thing, next day I'm talking about something else. So to answer your question, what happens is that you become, it's like a frantic mess. Like, you're frazzled, you're talking, you're going, well, who am I talking to again? And you're chopping and changing. So the mess you feel internally then is also projected externally, and other people start to feel confused about you and what you do and what you offer. And, you think, even if they make it far enough to be looking at what you actually are offering and making a choice, if you've got a menu of offerings that they are literally picking from, that's where the decision just stops, because it's like decision overwhelm. Everybody's got so much going on now in their brains. It's really hard. You don't want to be sitting there thinking hard to make a decision. You want it to feel like, oh, that's a simple, easy decision. Bang, let's do it. The resistance is so much lower. But when they're presented with so many options and choices, people can go into this analysis paralysis, overwhelm of trying to compare and what's going to be right for me. And this happens now way sooner than it used to. People used to be quite okay with having a few options to choose from. Now you give them more than two and they're like, whoa, okay, there's too much to think about here. So, there's been a lot that's changed. I think.
Agree. It's the same when you go into a restaurant. If the menu's too big, I don't know what to order.
I know. How long do you sit there? You're like, oh my God, now I've got 5 different things I'd really like, and which one do I choose? And what if I pick the wrong one?
Now, you said you knew this from the outset that, hey, we should sort of keep it streamlined and all the rest, but all of a sudden, over time, sort of it gets messier and busier and all the rest. Can you remember a moment when you, clicked and you go, like, oh my gosh, we need to pull this back a little bit? During that time, how do you see it when you're in it?
Yes, that is a great question, because, I say to my clients, I'm like, let's not blame yourself for where you're at, because it's evolved over time. You've kind of added something and it felt like the right thing to do at the time, and then you've added something else, and it always just seems like, well, this is a great fit and there's a reason to do it and it all makes perfect sense. And it's this evolution where I think as humans, because often we're creators, and definitely when you're in an entrepreneurial space, you are that kind of person who's an ideas person. You are a creator, right? You've created a business from nothing. It didn't exist before you started it. So you've got this natural tendency to begin with. And while it can make sense, there is that point where you might get to where you suddenly realize, oh goodness, okay, I've now created something so big. I'm like trying to drive this giant ship and I really wanted a speedboat. And for me, that happened when, well, actually my husband said, hey, why don't we take the kids out of school and buy a caravan and drive around Australia? I was like, that sounds really fun. And we'd talked about doing this at some point, but he's like, I think we've got to do it now. Like now, or, what better time is there than now? If we don't do it, then we won't do it. And I started to kind of process that and thinking, okay, what would this mean? What would happen with my business? I was like, straight away, I went, well, I can't continue my business the way it is if we're going to be on the road, and we bought the Starlink, right when it first arrived in Australia, the Elon Musk's Starlink. And I was like, well, I think I'm going to have internet access, but it hasn't actually made it the whole way around yet. We were kind of chasing the connections of it, like being available all everywhere around the coast of Australia. I just had to trust in it, be like, well, by the time we get there, it says it will be there. So let's hope, fingers crossed. But I went, right, I've really got to pare this back.
You took this journey. How old were your kids at the time?
How old? They were 5 and 8 when we left.
Oh, you're keen to be a small tin can like that, to work and have kids at that age, traveling around?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm kind of like, it was a good age. I even think it could have been even a little year or so older, especially for the younger one, because she was 5. She has got a great memory, but I think there'll be a lot that she probably just doesn't remember being 5. And it was definitely an awesome trip. And I just think they would even gain a little bit more from it, you know, having been, now she's 9, so she would definitely gain more from it now. It just gets harder, I think, when they get into high school. Then you think, oh, should I pull them out for a year? And so funny, because before you do it, you always think they're going to miss an important year. And then after you've done it, we know people who had kids who were in high school and they were like, it was fine. We did distance learning. They actually didn't miss anything, you know, a few social things, but they're getting other social experiences on the road. So yeah, I think I would just say, you know what, there's never going to be the perfect year, the perfect time to do it. So if you've got the notion and the ability and now seems good, then you just go for it, because you'll never regret it. Like, it's just one of those things. You never come back and go, damn, I wish we hadn't gone. You'd think, when can we do it again? You know, how can we?
Oh, well, you're inspiring me to do the same thing.
Yeah, that was awesome. But yeah, so it was basically, I had to make a plan of how we were going to do this trip, and it was like, right, where do I start cutting things off? So I sat down. I'm like, right, I'm cutting off the stuff that, you know, there were things I was doing that were free, which I still always had things for free, but I probably was doing a lot of stuff for free, really, that wasn't necessary. I was like, is it really adding value? Yeah, it was. If I was unsure, then it was on the cutting blocks. Nope, not doing the Facebook group anymore, not doing this anymore, that anymore. And then I also, with my offerings, I brought it back to just one. So I kept my program Business Jam, which was still sort of in its early days then, and thought that will be my main thing that I'm offering, because it works really well with being flexible hours and also travel and minimal time from me, meaning I could, you know, be able to offer support. What I didn't realize is we would actually have no mobile connection while we were driving. I was thinking, oh, I'll be able to get work done while we're in the car. No, there is literally zero coverage once you're outside of a city in Australia. Like, maybe the East Coast, there's coverage, but once you get anywhere out of that main populated area, as soon as you leave a city, like, you're an hour out of Adelaide, there's nothing. Bang, like zero, not even SOS connection. So that was not what I'd imagined, and it worked out really well that I'd cut things back, thinking, you know, I could do some online support and that would work out well, and do some live calls that I was able to schedule myself. And then I had a few one-to-one spots, which I really limited down to 3. So I was like, this is going to be what I'm offering. So it became really simple. I was like, do you want to work with me one-to-one, or would you like to have, you know, go into the program? The program Business Jam was always the first option, because it really had everything that the one-to-one clients got. They just, you know, then you upgrade if you want more of my personal time. So yeah, it became so much easier.
So how did simplifying to that one core offer in the immediate instance, and then moving on, how did that impact your revenue at the time?
Well, that was actually the really interesting thing, because I thought it was just going to put me on a lifeline and keep the business going while we traveled. But at the end of the year, when I did the tax return, my revenue had grown by 7% and my profit had actually grown by 55%. So that brings it back to all that time and effort and energy spent on the back end with multiple offerings, how much it actually costs, right? Because that was the difference. I still had some VA support that I'd obviously minimized down, because now I wasn't running so many things. I didn't need as much, but I still had VA support. I still ran my podcast. So I still had my podcast producer that I was paying. So, you know, it wasn't like it was just me. The business still had expenses, but the main difference was in the limited number of limited number of offers. And the other thing was I actually started running ads, like, a lot of ads on Facebook at the time. So you'd think that the profit would go down. The expenses have gone up. But even with that, I still had that incredible shift. So it was really, really interesting. And to be honest, quite unexpected. Like I thought it would maybe even out or be a little bit lower because I just had less going on. But even with the higher ad spend, literally just dropping all of that effort away from the business really streamlined it and increased the profit by a huge number.
So what do you think some of the common signs are that someone's offer suite is actually hurting their growth then?
So the common signs that offer suite is hurting growth would be where the offers, I would say, are not in a offer stack. They're more in an offer suite. So meaning like you've got separate offers that people are coming into and you're probably targeting them at different people. So this creates this confusion. It means that your message, your positioning are less clear because you're kind of trying to span the different offers and offerings that you have. And the more that happens, then the less you're relevant, the less that you're really recognized in that instant of like, this is a person that can help me. So what I like to do is help my clients sort of cut away any dead wood that's really just not adding a lot of profit to the business and is chewing up a lot of time and energy and resources, but then to bring the other things into a stack. So the way I like to explain it is all roads lead to Rome. You should have a Rome that everything leads to. And you might have a pre-offer, you might have a post-offer, but your signature offer, which is your Rome, is the thing that you become known for, people know of it. Whatever you're doing is leading people to it, whether it's via one step, whether it's via two steps, it doesn't matter. But your intention is always that they're going to Rome. And once they're in Rome, great. It lasts for however long. And, different businesses have different ways of looking at their signature offer. There's no one size fits all. There's definitely no cookie cutter. So some of them are one that you'd have earlier on, and some that you might have a pre-offer that helps them step up into it. But that there's always that alignment so that whatever you're putting energy, effort, and spend into, your resources are helping to get the people into that signature offer. So, to give an example, you might have a signature offer that's a one-to-one. You're not going to have tons of people in it because one-to-one is, higher value and it's lower volume. But you would then have an offer before that would have more volume in it, but it would be the thing that they need in order to be ready to step into that one-to-one, so that there's a natural stepping stone. And then if you've got a signature offer like mine that's more able to be a wider group program, the way my one-to-one works is that it's that stepping stone after or alongside. If they actually are just wanting deeper or more support, then they can add that on or go into that afterwards.
I like it. Let's talk about positioning for a little bit. Okay, so how's positioning different from branding or content? And I guess which people often focus on first and all the rest, but talk about positioning.
Cool. All right. So positioning essentially is your position in the market. So where you are, like where is the place, the space that you're playing in? This is different from branding. Branding is who you are in that space, right? So they are very linked. And I think often people do get a little confused around the differences between positioning strategy and brand strategy because they do get so intertwined. I like to kind of bring the brand strategy in under the positioning. So it's like we start off with where we are, what is the space that we're going to own and define, and then the brand is sort of how you're communicating that. How are you showing up and being that business, that brand, and communicating what you know? Because if you're not able to communicate, it doesn't really matter how good you have the idea in your head. If you can't get that out and have other people understand it, then you've only done half the job. So the branding part of it really comes into how you're owning that space. But you've got to define the space first. A lot of people kind of forget that. They skip over it, or they're very broad and often afraid, I think, to define a space because it feels like it's going to make your opportunities smaller and less. So people logically know, well, if I get more specific, people recognize me easier, but then their subconscious fear kicks in and goes, but it's going to mean there's less people that I'm relevant for. So they really repel against it, almost physiologically repel. We'll be sitting there having a discussion, and this is a huge part of my business jam program. So I love doing it in a group environment because people can sort of be able to see themselves in someone else, and they can, feel more like it's okay. We're all going to do this and we can get through it better. But they really reject and repel this idea of getting specialized. And I just want to say on that, to me, there's 3 levels. The first is your general niching. Second, specialization is sort of what we used to talk about probably 5 to 6 years ago. And that was when you took your niche and you became more specialized, and yay, you get paid more because you're more of an expert and rah-de-rah. Now that's only level 2. I think there's a 3rd level, which is really where we need to get to today in this market, because there's so many more people out there, even specialists. You're like one of many. Now, what do people choose you based on? And when there are one of many, it always comes down to price comparison. That's not where you want to be, because it takes away that advantage of being a specialist, right? Now you're competing on price, so everything's going back down again. So the 3rd level in positioning that I like to now take people to is category ownership, which means that you actually create almost like your own category, and define a space that you can own because it's quite unique. Now, it might be slightly unique from others, but it is still unique, and it's somewhere that you can own, where suddenly you're not feeling like I'm battling up against all these other people and they're doing the same as me and how do I sound different? It's like suddenly all of that goes away. You feel like you're in your own room and like, I've got space. I can now talk, and I've got a place to be that I have leadership in, because you've created from in here, not from comparing other people and trying to sound different to them. It's so different when that positioning and owning a category, creating one that you can own and lead, when it comes from within you, it gives you that instant power, that credibility, the clarity that you're never going to have when you're sort of trying to do it from a comparison point of view.
So to give listeners like a really good example, how would you describe your positioning?
Great. So my positioning is that I help people to become category owners and leaders and create what I call a signature solution, which again is not completely a new idea. People go, I already know what my signature program is. However, I define it quite differently in my world. So your signature solution is really the way that you deliver your unique category, your positioning, your expertise that is different to other people. So it's not just a program that's, here are my 4 pillars and I've got some lovely Canva graphics to explain it. It's not a package that you've put a brand name on it and suddenly it's a signature. That doesn't make it your signature. Your signature means it's your way of getting to a transformation. And that comes from not because you've copied someone else's template of how you put a coaching program together. It actually comes from your learned and knowledge, your expertise on how you get someone to that transformation. So my signature program, Business Jam, has a very unique framework within it that I've developed myself. And it takes people from being that invisible person, that one of many, to actually being the go-to expert, right? We go through the phase of first becoming an obvious choice, and then once they are being the obvious choice, adding in more visibility so then they get known and they can become the go-to expert. So it has a very unique rhythm to it. It's got unique pieces within it. It's got my own frameworks that don't exist anywhere else. So it is my signature program. Business Jam is purely mine. It doesn't exist with a different name somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I love it.
Okay, good. I'd like to know if it doesn't, because then I'm like, I haven't explained it properly.
Now, more and more people, I think, are becoming prevalent of this in terms of about balancing business and income goals with lifestyle and freedom. Because, we mentioned before, in your corporate life, and that's one thing, business ownership, ideally one of the reasons people start, it's not just money, it's freedom as well.
Yeah.
But so many people get stuck and they create a prison for themselves. So, what are some practical ways that you think to design a business that supports your life, not just consumes it? And of course, one of those examples you gave was like, hey, we were able to take a trip. I got Starlink and, away we go. And I made a better business because of it.
Yeah.
But what do you think are some practical ways that people could actually start thinking about in their business to do?
Good question, because this is exactly how I coach people to do it. And even it doesn't matter if you've already got a business and you're working in it and thinking this isn't giving me the lifestyle I want. It's like you can start with these steps now. So the first step for me is actually starting with the life. And by that, I mean, I actually get my clients I give them a week template and I get them to block out, okay, start with sleep. So block out your sleep. And then we put in all the non-negotiables. So sleep should be a non-negotiable. Your health is super important. What else do you have in there that is a non-negotiable? So you think about, well, my kids swim squads. So I'm literally at the pool 6 days a week. There are things that are like, these are non-negotiable because I've made this choice and I support that. So you block all of these things in there, right? You need to put in time for you. Is it your goal that you exercise however many times a week? Put that in, because if you don't put it in, then it gets swallowed up, because you're always going to have more to do in your business than what you have time for. If you're a business owner and you don't have a to-do list that, you could fill books with, then I think you're probably not really leveraging your potential, or you've just created a really micro admin job for yourself. But really, there's always going to be a never-ending amount of things that you could do and ideas and actions that you can take, because that's not the point. It's like we need to be looking at the 5% actions. So to get back to the structure, I like them to start with that and actually really get present to how many hours do I actually have in a week for the business, for work. That's where we start with. Because when you start with an open slather thinking, yeah, I've got a business and I don't mind working full time and I'll put in extra hours, like you don't end up creating the offer that actually delivers the lifestyle that you want. And so you get that, like you said, totally disjointed experience of running the business, because it actually is taking away from the life that you want to be living. So when you start with the life, and then you slot the business in, then you can see straight away whether, okay, is the offer I have right now, is it even viable? Can I be profitable with that offer in those hours? Because you go, well, here's the time I have. How many clients can I serve in that time? This is how much I'm charging. It's simple math that you do. Like it doesn't take any kind of math wizard, but we just punch the numbers in and the calculator spits out the result, and you'll know straight away whether you're way under or you're great. Okay, I'm going to hit the revenue goal that I have. By that should be the profit goal, right? Because your own income, to me, is not an operating expense. So there's the operating expense of the business. Then you should be seeing the profit over and above that. That's how you pay yourself, and any extra you can invest back in. And that's really simply the way that I approach it. And it's helped so many people realize that, and kind of be okay with the shift that we do, because sometimes they can feel afraid of creating a signature offering. And to give you an example, I had one lady years ago now. She was a voice artist. So in her industry, they charge by the minute for voiceover work. And she was like, I've got this vision. And she only had 10 hours a week that she could use for her business. So very, very minimal. And I was like, right, so charging by the minute, doing what you're doing with 10 hours a week, you're not even making enough, as a hobby, really, like you're nowhere near covering business expenses. So let's just start from a blank page and reimagine it. And, cutting to the chase, in the end, what she ended up with was a really strategic service offering where she would work with only 3 clients maximum in a year to help them identify their strategic brand voice, how it sounded. So we normally talk brand voice. All the marketers out there will know that's normally, your tone and all of those things in your brand communications. But this was actually the sound of your brand voice with an actual voice, a human voice. So she would help their brands to come up with their sound. And that was completely different. It actually had never been done in the industry before. So she was telling other voice actors and people, this is what I'm going to do now. And they laughed at her. They're like, that's not how you, that's not how things are done. Ha ha ha. And, she got really scared at that point, thinking, well, oh my goodness, am I going completely down the wrong path? And I was like, well, there's one way to find out, but you've come up with this from your understanding of what your clients are after. And we've connected and we've created a package with pricing that's going to work for you. It's going to give you the income you need, and you're going to be able to do it in your 10 hours a week. And within 3 months, she had smashed her entire annual revenue target because it worked for her. And she's just gone on from there.
I mean, I'd suspect there are some companies out there that are willing to pay millions of dollars to get that kind of service as well.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like, we just needed to create the offering that actually was going to fit for her, with not only, leverage her amazing experience, her expertise, take her out of the catalog of thousands and actually put her in a place that she can own. So we created a brand new category of the market that did not exist before. She created a signature offering, and it wasn't hard. She literally put it out there and she had people sign up because it was exactly what they wanted, even though they hadn't ever heard of it before, but it wasn't a hard thing to explain. So, that's really, I just love that story because it's just the power, the difference of creating it. The goal ultimately for her was, I want a business that fits for my life, where, she had a target, and it turned out she could smash that target 4 times over in the year because the way that we, re-envisioned her offering, she had no idea that was even possible when we started, but it was more about even making it work and the hours and the time she had available so she could homeschool her kids and, all the other things that for her were non-negotiables. And yeah, that's kind of the approach.
I'm really interested because you deal with a lot of people in this space. And to be clear, I know there are people out there that make $0. They just don't make it. And then others that can make multiple $1 million. But it's the same with any kind of industry, okay? So there's the outer rims. But when do you feel on average people are – what do you think people are wanting to achieve in terms of maybe income, maybe working hours? What's the mindset out there that you kind of feel on average people are looking for?
Like specifics in terms of what their goals would be?
Yeah, how many hours does the average person actually want to work in this day and age? How much money do you think they actually want? I know this is a loaded question and it's all individual, but what are you sort of feeling out there?
So I think if we were going to average it out, I would say the average person's thinking around 20 hours a week is probably, doable, and they might like to do less if it's working for them. But, I think I work with a lot of women who are mums, and they will and they can work more, but if they really think about it for sustainability for the long term, you want to be working in the hours that your kids are at school, if they're school age. Really you want to be around for the morning, help them successfully get off for their day. You want to be around in the afternoon. I mean, I'm taking them to squads in the morning and the afternoon, and we do soccer, netball, all these other sports as well. There's a lot happening there. Then you've got to also feed them, do groceries, there's all the general stuff of just living life.
You've got a life to run.
Yeah, exactly. And so, do you really want to be spending your evenings working, or do you actually want to hang out with your partner, your husband, your wife, and have some couple time as well? So I think if we boil it down to that, ideally for most people, it'd be that 4 to 5 hours while the kids are at school. That would fit in and allow them to then have the rest of the time to do general life stuff.
Yeah, because to be fair, in general, it used to be one person in a family would be working, and then somehow over the last number of years, now we've got both people in the family having to work to, make the financials work. So it's certainly had a shift in the last 30 odd years, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And, I think as well, a lot of people, you said, what are they really wanting? And I don't think people waking up thinking I want to work, but there's definitely a lot of people who are in our space and clients that I work with who actually want fulfillment, right? So they're like, They are a parent, they're a mum, they definitely want to be a great parent and do all those things for their kids, but they also, on a personal level, they want to feel like they've contributed something they're proud of to the community, to the world, and usually because we're not having kids at the age of 20 anymore, we've had a career, we've been a professional, we've learned something, we've probably been to university, we've got qualified in things. And I don't know many people that just go, well, now I'm just going to be a parent and not do anything. Nothing wrong with that either. But most people feel like, you know what, I actually want to do something for me so that I wake up in the morning and I've got a purpose. I feel proud of myself. I'm fulfilled because I'm, feeding that need of being appreciated, of adding value, of having a worth that you can bring to others. And I think people genuinely like to help other people, right? So I think that drives people as well on a many levels. And it's also why I think there's a big difference between creating a business as another job, like as a job for yourself, which tends to be kind of like that freelance. It's sort of like that first step out of the employee world, but you're kind of still an employee. You're just working for other people, but they're paying you differently, to actually being really driven by personal fulfillment and doing the thing that is absolutely what you're here to do. And, it does take a bit of, I think, learning yourself and discovering yourself and what that is that lights you up and that you're quite happy to and actually look forward to doing. Like, I like the fact when my kids are at school, I'm like, right, what am I really getting my teeth stuck into? And sometimes I've got to remind myself to switch the brain off when we're doing family time and not be thinking about my clients and business. And, it's hard to separate the two at times. But, there's that just, I do it because I want to and because I really love it. I could go and get a job anytime, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah, too right. Okay. Just a quick rapid-fire question before we wrap up. What is the best way to stand out in a crowded market right now? As you mentioned before, that, hey, it's more crowded than when you started.
Yeah. Look, I think it is this actually getting really clear and creating your own category, something that is different. You're not just the same as a whole bunch of other people offering the same thing, just maybe dressed up with slightly different language. It's actually that you've got something that is quite unique in value. And that is the best way to be noticed. And you'll know when it happens because you'll have people that, basically they start coming to you and going, wow, I want to know more. I want to hear more. I want to find out about working with you. You're not going to feel like wallpaper anymore. You're going to actually be engaging people. And if that's not happening, then you haven't gone specific enough. Sometimes you might be clear in your mind, but then when you start trying to explain it to other people, it can sound quite generalist. And that's no fault of anybody's. It's just often what I notice, how things come out. It's like, oh, well, tell me more about that. Like, let's actually break it down to deeper levels so that you can be clearer. And, can I just add, please don't use AI. That's the one way to just sound like everyone else. It's like, even though they'll go, oh, I'm going to teach it to talk like me and all the things, it's still not you. Use it for brain. I'm not saying I'm not against AI. Like, I use it for specific things for productivity basis, right? Use it for brainstorming. Use it for you. It's a tool, exactly. Yeah. But you don't want a tool to speak for you because then you're just going to sound like a tool, and so is everyone else. And there are way too many tools out there, so let's not be tools.
I love it. Hey, Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show. There's really a lot in this conversation that I know will resonate with a lot of people out there that may be feeling stuck or just ready for that next level. So where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about your work and how you help them? Where are they going to find you?
Awesome. Well, probably the best place to find me would be on my podcast, She's the Business, because you can listen to as much as you like. But then if you're wanting to reach out and actually have a conversation, you can come over to my website and get in touch there. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. I love to hang out on Threads. I don't know. I was never a Twitter person back in the day, but I do like just the quick kind of text-based notes that you can do on Threads. So I do hang out there fairly often as well.
And just to be clear, your website is?
Website is Jessica Osborn. That is no E on the end. I know it's a weird spelling. JessicaOsborn.com. And I'm also jessica.osborn over on Instagram.
Awesome. Hey, look, if you're listening to this episode and it's got you thinking differently about your business, whether it's sales, systems, or strategy, that is the point. So if you do want help identifying your biggest bottleneck, mapping out your next smart move, you can also book a free breakthrough session with myself and the Coach Birds team. Jessica, thank you once again. And let's just keep building smart and keep it simple. I love it.
Thanks so much, Mitchell. It was a great conversation.
Let's talk small business. I appreciate you tuning in. If you got value, hit subscribe, like, or drop a comment. It spreads the word and might just help another legend get their breakthrough.